Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and we're on the road for a few days here. But we are going to keep pushing through with our schedule breakdown, schedule prediction series. Today we had the Florida Gators. So Florida had Billy Napier last year. They fired him after their win over Mississippi State, and they have brought in Jon Sumrall. Now, really, the story of Florida's offseason was how much talent they retained. Right, they didn't really go out in the portal and get one of those top 10 guys, one of those elite multi-million-dollar players in the portal, but they kept a bunch of them. Jaden Ball, Dallas Wilson, Jaden Woods, Miles Graham, Vernell Brown even. These are all guys that would command multi-million-dollar deals in the portal, but Sumrall just walked in and kept them, which is arguably more impressive, as a new coach than going out and getting a guy. So Florida, it's clear they're already buying into Jon Sumrall's vision, and the roster talent is there. It's Florida. It's always going to be there. The question is, are the X's and O's there? Is the coaching staff there? Is the alignment there within the program and to the administration to where the team can really win some games? So let's go through Florida's schedule here. It's not nearly as bad as the past 2 years have been. So Sumrall kind of has a slightly easier schedule than some of the other Florida seasons of the past. So let's just go straight into it. In week 1, the Gators start with FAU at home. That'll be a win for Sumrall in his debut in Gainesville. And then in week 2, they host Campbell. That'll be even worse. Another win there for the Florida Gators. In week 3, they quickly get their first test. In the SEC opener, they go on the road to play Auburn. Now, what makes this game so intriguing is that, first off, Sumrall and Alex Golesh at Auburn, they were hired at the same time in this latest cycle. So fair or not, they're going to be measured against each other to really gauge their success at their respective schools. Right, they came in at the same time. Florida and Auburn are decently comparable in the SEC to where you can really look at, this guy's doing this at Florida or at Auburn. Why aren't you doing it here? So it's a launchpad game just for this season. It's going to be massive in the debate between those two coaches. And just it really will set the tone for whichever school wins this game, because both Florida and Auburn, obviously with new coaches, a bunch of new faces, they're not really expected to compete in the SEC this year in terms of, going to Atlanta, maybe a playoff spot. But they're both talented enough, on paper, to where they can easily win some games that maybe they shouldn't. So the winner of this game is going to immediately spring forward with all that momentum, be 1-0 in conference, and really be able to potentially make some noise in the SEC this fall. So this game is incredibly important. It is at Jordan-Hare, which does matter. What I'm looking at here is that I think that Florida's talent is going to be able to outweigh Auburn's in this game, and I say that because there's not a school in the country that lost more talent than Auburn did, I don't think. I mean, just between Cam Coleman on offense, really all those receivers, and a bunch of key guys on defense, it's so much that Auburn lost and they have to replace. And they're replacing it, this is where it gets funny, with a lot of USF guys. Now, USF went into Gainesville last year and beat Florida. So even though it's obviously a different school and they're on the road, this is almost a revenge game for Florida. Because like I said, with a good bit of continuity keeping their stars, a bunch of those Gator guys were on the field when USF beat them in Gainesville last year. So even though they're not wearing Auburn uniforms, it's almost a revenge game for Florida. And I think that with the revenge mindset, I believe they have more talent because of less extreme attrition. I think that Florida is able to go on the road to Auburn and get a big-time win in this spot. In week 4, Florida hosts Ole Miss in Gainesville. Now, 2 years ago, Florida, as a worse team than Ole Miss, beat them in Gainesville. They almost beat them last year in Oxford, and now they get them back at home again in year 1 repeat Golding for Ole Miss. And this one is week 4. They will have just been tested by LSU at home. So I think Ole Miss wins that game against LSU. Do they have a bit of a hangover? Coming on the road now to a Florida team that, in my mind here, is 3-0, but isn't really this contender. How much is there a hangover? And just how much is, if Florida is 3-0 here, how much is the swamp up and rocking for this game? How much momentum is there in Gainesville? I think it's a really good spot for Florida to get another win over an Ole Miss team here that's probably going to be top 10. Oh, sorry, they will definitely be top 10 if they're 3-0 at this point with wins over Louisville, someone in LSU. So I've got the Gators getting another big win here against Ole Miss in week 4 at home, and starting off the year 4-0 under Jon Sumrall. Then in week 5, when they go to Missouri, this is where I have Florida taking on their first loss. For A, they just can't keep winning forever, right? This Gators team is not that good, where I think they can run the table, win 10 or 11 games. And also just Missouri, I'm really high on Missouri's offense. I think they pulled in a bunch of pieces. They obviously have that staple of running backs, as long as Ahmad Hardy is healthy, to really put up points in a bunch of different ways. And I just think that after those 4 wins, a big home win at Ole Miss, when they go on the road to Missouri, I don't think they can really sustain it. And with how good I do believe the Tigers are going to be, I've got Missouri taking down Florida in Como to hand the Gators their first loss of the year, and they'll be 4-1 after week 5. And in week 6, the Gators will come back home and host South Carolina. I've got to win here. I do believe that Carolina is going to be better than they were last year because they retained those 3 superstars in Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, and Dylan Stewart. And they did I think they filled the spots around them better than they did last season. But I'm not sure they're going to be still, good. Their ceiling is really high, and I do believe that if those 3 are on, they can compete with just about anybody any given day. But after a road loss for Florida, they don't want to lose all that steam. I think that coming home against a Gamecocks team who will be just okay, less talented than Florida is for sure overall, they can get a win there against the Gamecocks. In week 7, after that, at this point, Florida would be 5-1. I believe they go to Texas, and I believe it goes poorly. I mean, I don't see anybody beating Texas this season, just, to be fully honest. I have Texas going 12-0 in the regular season. You remember 2 years ago, Florida went on the road to Austin, and they got embarrassed. And then last year, Texas came to Gainesville, and they got embarrassed. So I think you have Texas in a revenge spot here. Arch Manning back up against his Florida defense. And Texas, to me, Texas is just so good. That roster is so absurd. They made really good coaching staff upgrades at the coordinator spots. I think Texas is too good for everybody this year, and that applies to Florida here in Week 7 as well. So I have the Gators taking on their second loss in Week 7 at Texas to be 5-2 when they go into their bye week in Week 8. And coming out of that, they play Georgia in Atlanta this year. Usually in Jacksonville, it'll be in Atlanta for the next 2 years, I believe, while Jacksonville is being renovated. And I have Georgia beating Florida here as well. So back-to-back L's for the Gators. I just think that Kirby Smart versus Jon Sumrall, I do believe can grow into a really awesome rivalry. I have a hard time believing that Sumrall gets Kirby in year 1. I think it'll be another competitive game. We saw it be competitive last year. The talent gap between Florida and Georgia, even though the team gap has been really large, the talent gap has never been that big because both these programs are so good at recruiting perennially. So Florida can always compete with Georgia when things are going right. I don't think they beat Georgia this year, though. So give me the Dogs over the Gators in Week 9. Then in Week 10, Florida hosts Oklahoma. They come back home after losing their last 2 games. I've got them beating the Sooners at home. I think it's just another one of those things where just the swamp really factors in. And Oklahoma, I'm very high on their defense. And I do believe that if we got a full, healthy year of John Mateer, where he doesn't have a hand injury and had to get surgery on his throwing hand, he'll be a lot better. It's just one of those spots for me where I think that Florida at home in a year where they've had some positive momentum and have now lost 2 in a row on the road, road and neutral site. You get to come back home. I have the Gators picking up a win over Oklahoma. Week 11, they go to Kentucky. I'm kind of on my own planet here with Kentucky this year. I believe they're going to be pretty good. I only had them winning 7 or 8 games, so nothing earth-shattering, but I have Kentucky being a lot better than most people think, and I have Kentucky beating Florida here in Lexington in Week 11. I think it's just going to be another one of these games that Kentucky kind of just pops up and snags. Florida's had some bad luck recently in Lexington, and really just against Kentucky in general, and I believe that does kind of continue here. So year 1 with Sumrall, if he loses this game to Kentucky, it's not good, but if he does win some of these other games earlier that I have them winning, it could kind of get flushed. But I do think that Sumrall in his first season is going to struggle to get over that Kentucky hump. I think the Wildcats get Florida to hand Florida their 4th loss. And in Week 12, Florida will host Vanderbilt. I have a win there. This will put Florida as undefeated in Gainesville on the year, which I do believe is very possible. And just, for the Commodores, I had them taking a pretty big step back this year. You're losing Diego Pavia. You're losing Eli Stowers. I do believe that as a program, they're still headed in the right direction. And it was not just like a one-and-done thing last season. But, Jared Curtis is going to be great first year as a starter. Just overall, their talent profile doesn't match up with what Florida's is. So I have the Gators being able to kind of lean on Vanderbilt and get a win here in Week 12. Then in Week 13, to end the year, Florida goes to Tallahassee to play Florida State in what will be a Friday night game. I think we're at a point here where Mike Norvell is going to be fired. And FSU is just a total disaster again. That program's in the wrong spot, and it's still headed in the wrong direction. I just think that the Gators are going to keep dominating the Noles here until FSU makes a systemic change, and that won't stop this year. So I got Florida winning that game at FSU to end the year, and I have the Gators going 8-4 this fall. Now, that is absolutely a success. 8-4 in a vacuum is not a success at the University of Florida. For 2026, that is an absolute win. Especially if it features wins over schools like Ole Miss, like Oklahoma. You're beating, like Auburn, for the first time playing them in a while. They will still struggle against their rivals if this is true, where, it's Georgia and Kentucky. But, they don't. You can get the win over FSU at the end of the year to really wrap it all together. 8 wins and probably would be a top 25 season with this record is an absolute win for Sumrall in his first year. And it would really show that progress. It would show proof of concept. It will help him to recruit even better, both out of high school and out of the portal. I do think Sumrall turns it around in Gainesville, and it won't happen immediately. This won't be like an Indiana turnaround, but you'll see the signs of it this fall. I got Florida winning 8 games and being dangerous in the SEC as close as next season. So that'll do it for our Florida schedule prediction. 8-4 is a little bit higher than most. We'll see how that pans out. We'll see how the reaction is. But thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am doing college football and SEC football preview content every single day up until the season begins. So subscribe to me here and follow me on Twitter if you want to see all of that. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I will see you next time.